Hello everyone. In this video we're going to cover how to create the joints in the spine and also the arms. So what we're going to do first is I want you to go ahead and go to display and animation and joint size. Okay, here's our joint size. Now we're just going to leave this open for a moment, and then we're going to switch to our side view. Make sure you have shading and wireframe on shaded on, and then also shading and X-ray joints. Now what we'll do is we're going to switch to our rigging tab right over here, and we're going to go to skeleton and create joints. Okay, from this point we're going to start at what is called the root joint. The root joint is right here. It's what connects the entire skeleton of the mesh together. And let's go ahead and get started. So this is going to be our root joint. Now you'll notice it's really large, and I'm going to want another joint right here, and they're going to be looking like they're practically touching. Now the joint size really doesn't have any relevance as to how it will deform and animate and things like that. It just simply makes it a little bit difficult, especially if we're doing something as small as the fingers, to have such large joint sizes, because they collide and visually anyway, and it becomes difficult to work with. So we're going to turn the size down. I'm going to start at like 0.2, maybe 0.4, and I'd say that's a pretty good size for me to work my way through the spine. So I've already clicked once. I'm going to click again, and it's just going to, you'll notice it's just starting to parent. If it doesn't, I'll show you how to go back if anything happened while you were trying to change your joint size. So I'm going to work my way right up this spine here. So my root, my waist, basically my midsection. I'm going to add one more joint in this region. I have sort of a long torso here, and then one right here in the chest. And then you can go ahead and press enter. I want you to name these right away also, so you don't forget. I'm going to name it root and GNT for joint, and that's sort of a prefix that I use. And this one I will call waist, JNT, and then this one I'm going to just call it spine 1, JNT, spine 1, JNT, and spine 2, JNT, and spine, and this one I'm going to call chest, actually. Alright, so now that I've got these, if your character has a, just for example, if it's like a smaller character, leprechaun or troll, or something that's, you know, smaller in size and scale, you might not need as many joints here. So maybe you have to start at the root, and then maybe you have one for the waist, maybe you only have one spine, and then the chest. So that's a discretion for you, and if you have any questions, just go ahead and message me. Now I'll go ahead and I will start in the neck region. Now I told you it just in case, you can always delete it and restart, and at the end of every sort of skeleton, press enter. Technically you didn't have to stop at that point, because we're just going to run this right through into the neck. I'm going to start right here at the neck. Now you could start at the base of the neck, have one in the middle, have another here, but I think it's just a little bit too much. So I'm going to go right into the center of the neck, about give or take about here. I'm going to go to another one right at the base of the skull, sort of like the jaw line of your character. And I'm also going to bring this smaller, because we're starting to get into a little bit more fine visually anyway, so they don't collide. And then I'm going to click one at the back of the skull, and then one at the top of the forehead, and press enter. I'm going to start naming these. Neck 1, JNT, neck 2, JNT, neck. This I could call neck 3, that's fine. And then I'll call this one head. Alright. So now that I've got that done, you'll notice that my chest and my neck are not connected, and we need them to be connected. So I'm going to click on my neck joint first. Just click once, and then shift select your chest joint, and then press P. P is for parent, and you'll notice right away shading and X-ray joints that it does connect for you. Okay, so that's how you go ahead and do that. It's always good, I'm going to just press 5 here. It's always good to have your wireframe on shaded when doing this. But other than that, we've created the spine. Now we're going to get into creating the arms. Now, the reason that we create the spine from the side view is because in our side view, it automatically sets the skeleton's joints here at x equals 0, and that's really important to have as far as a more or less a symmetrical character goes. If it was asymmetrical, maybe you do something different, but in this case we're going to do it right up the middle from the side view. Then, and also from the side view, you can get a subtle sort of spine bend with it if your character has sort of like a indented back in this region. Maybe this person has sort of a larger midsection, or a how do I say it? A stronger chest, so it's the pectorals are very large. You may adjust your spine to the features of your character. Now I'm going to switch into my front viewport, and I'm going to use my skeleton tool and create joints. And I'm going to start, and you can turn shading and X-ray joints. There it is. And now I'm going to start at what is called the clavicle. So I'm going to start on the clav, move into the shoulder, into the elbow, and then stop at the wrist. And I'm going to go press enter. Now I'm going to switch to my top view. In my top view, I'm going to adjust this as needed. Now, if you didn't place your joints perfectly the first time, what you can do is, you'll notice if you try to move the joints around, it moves all of them, which is something we don't want to do. Maybe sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. So I'm going to just slightly move this one. Now I want to move, let's just say I only want to move my elbow. I'm going to hold D, and that allows me to adjust the pivot, and it only moves the elbow. And then I'm going to go to my wrist, and I'm going to move my wrist into place also. Now I'm going to go ahead and name these L clav, and it is extremely important to include that L first, because what we're going to do is we're going to mirror our joints to the other side. So we only have to do this once and save ourselves half the work, basically. And we'll do J and T. And then we'll do it also here, shoulder. And elbow. And it's really important, especially in the elbow region here, to have this angle. It basically tells Maya how you want this elbow to bend. Elbow, J and T, and L wrist. And maybe bring it a little bit here. Okay. L wrist, J and T. Now, moving into the fingers. What we can do here is, as a matter of fact, I'm going to include one extra edge loop on, no I'm not, I'll just keep it as is. It is important to have sort of this 3 lock-in here. I don't want anyone to be too confused, so I'm just going to stick with creating the joints. So, and especially later when we start skinning, you'll notice why I just didn't. Anyway, going back into the joints. I'm going to change this to 0.1 because the fingers are very small. And 0.1 doesn't even look like it's, maybe 0.05. Yours may be different, but I want to make sure I don't, I can visually see this easily. Now, instead of doing it from the top view. You can do it from the top view. Create joints. You could do it from the front view also, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to simply just run this down, one at each joint, and then one at the very tip, and then press enter. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start to name them. So L index 1 J and T. And a little shortcut, you can copy and then do paste and do 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is duplicate it. So holding Control and D, go ahead and shift this up, and then L middle 1 J and T, and I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to just simply holding D start shifting these joints into the proper positions. Okay, and then rename them. Middle 2, three, and 4. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this one, shift it over, and then move these into place. And I'm setting the center joint directly on the middle edge loop. Something like that's good. And then L ring 1 J and T, and then copy, and then we'll paste these, and 2 and 3 and 4. And naming these is extremely important. Okay, start putting these into place. L pinky 1 J and T, Control C, 2, copy paste 3, and I'm just changing these as I go through them, and 4. Alright, so now that I have that done, what I'm going to do is, when you switch your viewport, you're going to notice that they're at y equals 0 here. So I'm just going to simply select my joints. Kind of looks Wolverine-esque if you ask me, with the claws. And then we'll go ahead and select those, and then I'm just going to drag them right up. And using my front viewport, I want to make sure it just kind of runs down the center of the hand, like so. Now other things you can do is you can create your joints in a way that I just selected all of them and held D, and that allows me to adjust all of them at the same time. If you would like to know, just like the elbow where you have that joint sort of bent, it's not as needed in this particular instance, but I just will cover it with you anyway and create a subtle bend in these regions. And I need both viewports to do this, so now I'm shift selecting each one of these, and I'm going to just slightly bring these up too. Alright, so there's my finger joints. Now I need to create the thumb, so I'm going to do that in my top view. And with the thumb it really doesn't act as a finger, but there is a joint back here it's also in your joint in like real life, in the far back of your thumb inside the hand. Alright, so there's one back there, then we have another here to bend, and then we have another one here, and then one here. So it's just slightly different. And then L thumb 1, J and T. Okay, copy, and then I'm going to run through and do this paste. 2 and 3. And 4. Okay. So, now the next part we do is just like we did. You can highlight all of these simultaneously, shift select the wrist last and press P, and all of them will joint to the wrist at the same time. Now, the one thing I just actually slipped my mind is that my thumb joint is all the way down here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag this all the way up, and I'm going to zoom in on it and just put it into place. And there we have it. So there is our setup. Now, with that being said, we want to mirror our joints to the other side, so this way we don't have to do it again. So I'm going to select it all the way from the base at the clavicle. And then what I'm going to do, I can close this for now. I'm going to do skeleton, mirror joints. In this case, we're doing, I believe, Y, Z, and we'll find out in a second. I believe it is. Search for L and replace with R and mirror. Yep, Y, Z. And then it just goes ahead and mirrors directly on that axis for us. Now the last thing we can do is select our arm joints and parent them to the chest, and now we've got our entire upper body skeleton set up. Later we'll get into doing some jaw controls, and even later we'll do facial controls and ways to do that, but we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to use a method called blend shapes, and when we get into the jaw, we're going to use a different technique called set driven key, and that's about it. So we're gonna stay away from the face and the jaw at the moment, but as long as we have our base skeleton in here, that's all we're trying to accomplish. So if you have any questions, be sure to message me, and thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.